A long time ago, a mysterious stranger graced the land of Faerun. He appeared in a small village, not unlike most others you would see littering the Sword Coast, and he came with a mission: slay monsters and in exchange for coin. He did many favours up and down the Sword Coast, so if you had a monster problem, this man would do it. He had silver white hair like a white wolf, scars all over his face, and deep yellow eyes. One day, though, he mysteriously disappeared, but his battle techniques and manner of fighting and his incredible alchemical skill did not go unused by the people of the Sword Coast. People learned. Children were given various potions and elixirs that the same man originally introduced in order to turn them into the same mutated warriors. But the skills of Faerun's people, that being their magical prowess, extend beyond just what the Witchers were capable of, and as such the school of fighting that the Witcher bestowed upon the people has been expanded on and become slightly more arcane in nature. As such, the School of the Dragon was born. Hello, and welcome to this new video. That is a weird outro. Let me just start over. Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing a Witcher build, a highly requested build for my channel. Of course, many people have just asked me to just straight up make Geralt, but so many people have already done that I have decided to put my own twist on things. What this is a Witcher inspired build. However, it was going to focus more on elements that D&D brings in, and as such, you know, isn't quite a one-to-one recreation of Geralt or a standard Witcher, but more just kind of takes the basic abilities of what a Witcher is and tries to amplify them. Now, a lot of people have made Geralt and other Witcher builds by going, you know, Battlemaster, Fighter, Ranger, all that good stuff, and those are perfectly valid and extremely good builds, but since I don't like to copy what other people do, at least not intentionally, I wanted to come up with something myself, and as such, I have decided to go with a slightly different route, hence my intro there. So let's get into the build. First off, we're going to be a fighter. Now, this is quite obvious. It is going to get us a fighting style, and I want to go with great weapon fighting, since we're going to be mainly using a single longsword. Now, I know that Geralt in the video games and Witches in the video games use two stores, steel for people and silver for monsters. But in the books and in the show, and I've read the books and watched the show, Geralt is historically known to only use one sword. And since Geralt doesn't really dual wield, I've decided to just focus on using one sword for now. And as such, having great weapon fighting. What is going on? Okay, the UI is being a bit weird, bear with me. But since I will decide to go with great weapon fighting, so we get that little bit of extra damage on our two-handed attacks with our longsword. As for our ability scores, these are going to look a bit weird, but bear with me. 16 strength because it's going to be our primary attacking stat, 8 dexterity because we're going to be bumping it up with the gloves of dexterity, 14 constitution because it's a nice middle ground, 16 intelligence because it's going to be our main spellcasting modifier, and wisdom and charisma at 10 because I didn't want either of them at 0. As for our skill proficiencies, I want you to take... oh my god, well, UI's being weird. I have to click off of things to put them back on. It's weird. Anyway, I want you to grab medicine proficiency. That'll come up in a minute, and you probably know why if you've been on this channel long enough. And I would say you're also going to want to grab survival and animal handling, because those are very witchery skills, although any of these other ones would also work. Nature as well could probably work, but since we're playing as a human, we have a few more options, but we're still only limited to picking one, and I mainly want to go with medicine. Next up, at Fighter Level 2, we're going to be getting our Action Surge. You know the drill, basically gain an extra action for once per short rest. Super good, worth picking up. Now, next up at Fighter Level 3, we are going to get to choose our subclass, and again, I know most people would go Battle Master here to get the maneuvers to be able to do the spinning and the flipping and the dipping that, you know, Witchers tend to do, but I've decided to just go for the Eldritch Knight. With this build, rather than focusing on weapon skills and all that sort of thing, I want to focus on two aspects of the Witcher. I want to focus on the sign abilities, that being Axii, Igni, Quen, Ard, and Yrden. I can't believe I actually remembered all of those without having to look at the list. That's pretty good. And also the ability to make potions. So you can probably guess where I'm going to go with this build, at least multiclassing wise, but bear with me because I think you'll still like the end result. And speaking of, we're going to get to cantrips. I want Firebolt. This is going to be our basic level version of Igni. This new school of the Dragon Witcher school has kind of learned to make the traditional Igni sign a bit more far range, give it a bit more range, and now it's fired as a projectile and not just a cone of fire. We're also going to grab friends. This is going to be... which one is it? Just so I can double check. It is going to be Axii, because, you know, Geralt witches have the ability to influence others with psychic abilities, and as such, friends is a very great example of that. Now we are going to get a couple of spells from the Eldritch Knight spell list, and I think our choices here are pretty obvious. We're going to go with Shield first. This is Ken. This is going to give us that little force field that is going to allow us to resist attacks, you know, the ones the witches get. And also Thunder Wave in order to grab Ard, which is the force push that kind of pushes enemies away from you and allows you to gain distance. These all fit perfectly in line with a Witcher, and this means at level 3, you're going to have most of the Witcher signs already, so you're really going to feel like you're dipping into that playstyle quite early on. Rather than having to get a multi-class or get certain items, you'll just, as soon as you hit level 3, you've got 4 out of the 5, which is awesome. And finally we get to go on to the expanded spell list, and it's entirely up to you what you grab here. But there are a few things that would work for a Witcher build. Namely, Burning Hands to be that alternate form of Igni, which is where it's more of a spray. Charm Person if you feel like you want to be able to use the Axii in combat, but I'm personally not going to go with this. I think Friends is perfectly good. So I'm personally going to be going with Burning Hands to get that cone variant of Igni, which is a bit closer to the actual Witcher games. At fighter level 4, we are going to be able to grab our first feat, and there's no specific feats that I want, so I want to bump up our primary weapon attacking stat, which is strength, because we're using a longsword, and you're going to be using the Potion of Everlasting Vigour to boost this up to 20, and I'm going to be flavouring that as our Witcher mutagen elixir potion thing, if I could speak, which is going to give us our permanent strength buff, like, well, a Witcher would seemingly get. So I think it's pretty on theme to actually grab the Potion of Everlasting Vigour in this run to give you a total of 20 strength. And it would be pretty easy to get it by this point, so you'd be feeling pretty powerful already. We are also going to get an extra spell at this level, and I'm going to be going with Protection from Evil and Good. You protect an ally, or I guess yourself, against the powers of aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead. Basically, it's a perfect Witcher spell in order to be able to go after those monsters that Witchers are known for slaying. We don't really have anything else that we're going to be concentrating on at the moment, so this is a nice buff to just have up that is perfectly on theme. So yeah, let's keep going. Next up at fighter level 5, we are going to be grabbing our extra attack. I mean, it's extra attack. What else do you want me to say? Next up at fighter level 6, we are going to be getting our bonus feat, and I want to use this to bump up our intelligence to 18 so our spellcasting is a bit better. And finally, at fighter level 7, we are going to be getting our War Magic feature, allowing us to cast cantrips and make weapon attacks in the same turn, because after you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack using a bonus action. This is going to allow us to use our signs and swords exchangeably in combat, basically allowing us to be both a magic user and a sword wielder, a perfect gish, which is what a true Witcher would be. And now for our spells. I mean, I think our options here are pretty obvious. We want Scorching Ray and Shatter. These are upgraded versions of our Igni and Ard signs respectively, so want to pick those up. Now, again, as with all my builds, you can take the multi-classing whenever you see fit, but I'm just, for the purposes of this build, showing the multi-classing in order. And as much as I would love to grab this extra feat from Fighter, we are going to be jumping over to Wizard now. And I would probably take the first 2 levels of Wizard after you get your extra attack as a fighter, to be able to get the Transmutation subclass, to be able to make your potions a bit more effectively, but it's entirely up to you. As for our cantrips, we can just grab some generic options, and although none of these are really on theme for a Witcher, I'm going to say that Acid Splash can be flavoured as making some sort of like acid grenade that you throw at people, but obviously that's a stretch. And I would say Minor Illusion could be an alternate version of Axii, which is like another mind manipulation thing that witches have learned to do in the School of the Dragon. And then finally, I also would like a close range cantrip, and Shocking Grasp does that nicely. As for our spells, we've picked a lot of spells that we would want from this subclass already, thanks to Eldritch Knight. So we can just grab the typical utility options here, just so we have them in our kit. And I would also grab Grease, because Grease would allow us to have another kind of grenade type thing. It basically gives us access to bottles of grease as much as we would like, but if you're not too into that, Chromatic Orb as another thunder attack or even a fire attack, it could be either, could also work, and I quite like just having the utility options here. Next up at Wizard level 2, like I said, we are going to be grabbing our subclass, and I've already said what I want. Obviously, it's Transmutation to give us Experimental Alchemy, allowing us to make 2 alchemical solutions instead of 1 when combining extracts if we succeed a DC 15 medicine check. That is why we grabbed our medicine proficiency, and with this we are now going to be infinitely more effective at brewing our witch's potions, such as potions of speed, elixirs of cloud giant strength, even our toxins and poisons that we can apply to our blade, and even grenades as well. There is going to be a ton of options for us here that is going to make you feel like a true witcher. Get into the alchemy side of things, get those buffs, and truly lean into the playstyle. We're also going to be getting some extra spells at this level, and take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. I like having a cat. And I will grab Chromatic Orb because I kind of made a case for it earlier. Yeah, sounds good to me. Now, next up at Wizard level 3, we are going to be getting some level 2 spells, and again, there's nothing here that immediately stands out to me, but there are a couple of things I would like to get. See Invisibility would allow you to use your enhanced Witcher senses to be able to spot invisible prey that are trying to get the jump on you, and your next spell can really be whatever you like. If you want the Charm Person spell for that upgraded version of Axii that could be used during combat, it absolutely works out, and I think I am personally going to be taking it. But if there's anything else you guys can think of here that I might have forgotten about that would be on theme, please let me know. Next up at Wizard level 4, we are going to be getting our final feat of the build, and I want to use it to bump up our intelligence to 20, so with the Potion of Vigour, we would have 20 strength and 20 intelligence, making us a very, very good spellcaster and a very, very good martial fighter. Although, of course, you could also dump strength if you wanted to focus on using the Cloud Giant elixirs, but, I mean, I don't like to rely on those all the time, but it would definitely work. And as for our final cantrip of the build, really, take whatever you like, I'm just going to grab Light. And again, we get 2 more level 2 spells at this point, and I wouldn't mind grabbing something like Mirror Image, using Axii to make illusions of yourself in your enemy's mind, so that you're harder to hit. And perhaps as well, in that similar vein, we could go with the Blur spell. I think being able to kind of use Axii to muddle your enemy's brain and again make you harder to hit in 2 different ways would be super, super good, but Mirror Image and Blur do kind of overlap in utility, so there is other things you could grab, like maybe if you wanted to grab Hold Person and you can kind of flavor it as being Yrden making a paralyzing trap, but we're going to get better versions of Yrden in a minute. However, Hold Person definitely works. And I would say, yeah, we're going to slap some of these bad boys on here. Perfect. And finally, at Wizard level 5, we're going to be getting access to level 3 spells, and there's 2 that I want, and it's not Haste, surprisingly. These are going to round out our Yrden Glyph. We're going to be grabbing Glyph of Warding and Slow. Yrden is all about placing a glyph trap on the ground that is going to basically slows down your enemies, so we're kind of getting this in 2 spells. Glyph of Warding will allow us to place a glyph on the ground that triggers when stepped on, and that can explode with multiple different elements, or in our case it's probably going to be thunder in order to kind of make it work. And then Slow, which is going to allow us to target up to 6 creatures and slow them. Their movements and actions are affected, and their AC and dexterity saves are reduced by 2. It's basically the opposite of Haste, and Yrden does slow down enemies in the games, so it's absolutely worth grabbing because it's completely on theme. Yeah, so effective movement speed is halved, and armor class and dexterity saving throws are reduced by 2. Yes, I already said that. They can also can't take reactions, which is nice. And that is the build. Overall, you're going to be getting a seriously powerful utility character, which has a ton of useful spells that are good in any situation. You've got damaging spells, manipulation spells for conversation, trap spells like Glyph of Warding. You've got a ton of different things to work with, in fact. I'm just going to make sure that I actually have the spells I want equipped. So let's ditch you two and grab you two. Perfect. You're going to be an absolute asset on the battlefield. If you're working with maybe a bard and a sorceress, you're absolutely going to be able to help them out with your various traps and be an effective frontline fighter with a decent amount of tankiness. Overall, I think you're going to really enjoy the versatility of this build, and especially if you get into the whole potion thing, you're certainly going to feel like a Witcher, especially things like the potion of speed granting you haste. So yeah, I feel like overall you're going to get a lot out of this build, but let's get into the equipment. I'll get straight into the weapons first with Voss's Silver Sword, or maybe even Vesemir's Silver Sword if we wanted to go that way. Witches use silver swords, and this is a silver sword. It's one of the only ones that specifically specifies it's made of silver in the game, and it's one of the better weapons one of the better longswords in the game, being a +2 weapon that deals an additional bit of psychic damage. However, I would also pick up the Drakethroat Glaive to buff this as well, making it a +3 weapon, and probably giving it either fire or acid damage, as if you were coating it in oil or maybe even like an acidic substance that will burn through your enemies a lot quicker. As for our ranged weapon, I've gone with the Hellfire Hand Crossbow. Now, historically, witches did use a single crossbow in The Witcher 3. Geralt had one. Not dual-wielding crossbows, and since we didn't get to weapon fighting, I didn't really want to have dual-wielding crossbows, but having one for ranged attacks is pretty good, and the Hellfire Hand Crossbow is the best hand crossbow in the game. As well as being a +2 ranged weapon, it is also going to give us an extra use of Igni, being a level 3 Scorching Ray that we don't need to spend a spell slot on, which is pretty good. Now, let's get into our equipment. First up is the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. We are going to be inflicting a lot of conditions with this build, and since our spellcasting modifier is so high, we'd be pretty stupid not to take advantage of this. I would also grab the Ring of Arcane Synergy for this build, maybe, but I've instead gone with some other rings just because I've done that combo quite a lot. But if you wanted to maximize the amount of time you'll have Arcane Synergy up, you can stack those two together, but the Diadem is more than enough for this build. As for our armor, now as far as getting kind of like a Witcher-y fashion, the regular scale mail to start is actually going to do you pretty damn good. It's the starting thing for fighters, so you're going to have it right off the bat, and I've coloured it with the brown alabaster dye, but to be honest, any dye would work, but this was kind of the most witchery kind of look to me personally. And as you go through the game, I would recommend maybe grabbing the upgraded versions of the scale mail, that being the scale mail +1, which in my opinion I think is the perfect Witcher armor. I think it gives you that nice blend of brown and kind of the greyish dark metal with like the chain link underneath, which looks very close to Geralt's armor in my opinion. But if you feel like you want that extra bit of AC, the scale mail level 2, while being a bit more flashy, has still got that generic basic look about it, and looks pretty awesome in my opinion. This truly does look like a Witcher armor if it was in, you know, Baldur's Gate, so I think it works out pretty nicely. As mentioned before, we're going with the Gloves of Dexterity. We set our Dexterity score to 18, meaning that we don't have to level it up, because this build is pretty multi-ability score dependent. We need a little bit of everything, especially Intelligence and Strength, so just being able to bump up our Dexterity to such a high number for free is something that this build would absolutely love to have, and I feel like it's worth having. And finally, we have the Evasive Shoes, just giving us that buff to our armor class, because we kind of need it when we're wearing medium armor like this. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go with the 1T scale mail, which would give you a bit more AC, I guess, overall, so that could work, and it would if you're wearing the Gloves of Dexterity. But if you wanted to swap the Gloves of Dex for something else, maybe take these points out of Wisdom and Charisma and put them into Dex, you could go with other gloves as well. But actually, this combo looks pretty nice now that I'm looking at it. You know what? I think I might keep this, because it gives us more AC, looks a bit better overall, and it does not pose disadvantage on stealth checks. Yeah, why didn't I think of it? Yeah, go with the 1T scale mail. It's absolutely the best version. Why did I not do that? This is like my third video I've recorded and kind of edited up today, so, you know, I'm obviously starting to get into that, like, delirium. Anyways, let's keep going. Next up is the Amulet of the Harpers. This is basically just going to give us advantage on Wisdom saving throws, which we super want. I feel like that makes sense for a Witcher. And it's also going to give us a free casting of Shield, which doesn't cost one of our spell slots, which is nice since our spell slots are a little bit more limited, although we do have more than an Eldritch Knight would typically get. We do have the Explorer's Ring here for just a +1 to Nature of Survival. This was just a nice thematic ring that I wanted to show off because it's something different, because I use a lot of the same rings in my builds, but honestly, take the Ring of Regeneration, the Ring of Arcane Synergy, take whatever you like in the slot. And lastly, I went for the Ring of Protection just to get that extra little bit of armor class and round it out nicely. So yeah, that is the build, and overall, I am quite proud of this one. I think it was quite nice to try and come up with a different take on The Witcher, not just trying to make Geralt or make the same bog standard builds that a lot of other people have made. And again, nothing against other people making those builds, because they are probably the most accurate to Geralt, but I wanted to try something different, making a Witcher who isn't just Geralt. It is somebody that maybe has a direct tie to witches of the past who may have come to Faerun through a portal that they don't, that they absolutely loathe. But you know, I just kind of wanted to do something a little bit different, and I felt like that little bit of lore thing at the start was a nice way of kind of introducing this concept, and I think the final build that we've come out with is actually super, super fun. Yes, you are going to get some of those higher level glyphs or higher level Witcher signs kind of very late into the game, but they'll still be useful, and again, you can play around with the levels if you like, if you want to get certain things quicker, or maybe you could drop a level of Eldritch Knight if you don't really care about the War Magic feature, which lets you cast the cantrip and then make a weapon attack, and then maybe go for another level of Wizard to maybe grab Haste or something like that. But I feel like you're going to want to be getting Haste from your potions, and again, the potions and the elixirs are really going to change how you play this build. You'll see in the combat footage that I went with the Potion of Haste just kind of as a basic level understanding to kind of show you what the build is capable of, and it worked out quite nicely. But there's things like, you know, the Potion of Universal Resistance, you know, Purple Worm Toxin for your blade. You can do so many different things, and Transmutation Wizard does help with that. I think that is going to do it for me. Again, not really any end of video kind of stuff, because I'm recording these all in a single day, so there's no news. So if the combat footage still plays beyond this, well, there you go. Anyways, I will catch you all next time. Thank you so much for watching, and see you later.
Your turn now. If this ship gets found, or your spawn.